Shalom everybody and welcome back to Insights in the Parsha of the Week, Parshat Chayey Sarah, based on the insights of Rabbi Nachman and Breslov teachings. So in this Parsha, Chayey Sarah, after Sarah Imenu is buried, and Avraham Avinu is now seeking to get married off to find a good, worthy, righteous wife for his son Yitzchak Avinu. The Midrash in the end of last week's Parsha, after the whole story of the Akedah, and it was a big test of Avraham Avinu, because on one hand Hashem told Avraham that from Yitzchak, ki beYitzchak yikare lechazara, you'll have descendants and offspring through specifically Yitzchak, and then he tells him to make him an offering on the altar, on the Mizbeach in Har HaMoriah. So the Midrash says that Rashi quotes this Midrash where he says, I almost lost Yitzchak. I should have gotten him married already. If I would have gotten him married, then this wouldn't have happened. He would have already had children, etc., and there will be continuity. So the Midrash says like this, that there was a dilemma for Avraham Avinu. The reason why he stalled, the Midrash says, why he waited so long to get Yitzchak Avinu married, is because there was a choice of yichus or tzidkut. To find a zivug, a marriage partner for Yitzchak, who had a worthy family, yichus, has lineage, good lineage, or a girl who has merit in herself, she's righteous and worthy. So Avraham Avinu, then he thought, the Midrash says, Chaval that I'm waiting for family of lineage, family who's descended from my family. Avraham Avinu, his brother Nachor, right, and the Haran and Terach, etc., they're all descendants of Shem. That's what we're called Semites, right? Descendants of Shem. And Avraham Avinu was living in the land of Canaan at the time, which was originally given to Shem, but being taken over by the descendants of Ham, Canaan, being a descendant of Ham. So Avraham Avinu lived amongst the Canaanites, the Amorim, the Chittim. These are all Canaanite families, descendants of Canaan. And he didn't want to have Yitzchak marry a descendant of Ham, because Noah cursed Canaan. Aru Canaan, you'll be cursed for what you did. The Rashi brings down the opinion that the Canaan castrated Noah, right? Then Noah cursed Canaan because of that. It'll always be Eved Avadim. So Avraham Avinu was concerned about the lineage so much, more than righteousness, okay? So when the whole incident of the Akedah took place, Avraham Avinu said, forget about the Yichus now. Let me just find a good girl. Let me take from the daughters, the righteous daughters, the Nashim Tzadkaniyot, the daughters, Bnot Tzadkaniyot of Aner, Eshkol, and Mamre. These three, Aner, Eshkol, and Mamre, were actually descendants of Canaan, but they converted, or they were righteous, they were students of Avraham Avinu. The Torah says they were called Baalei Britim Avraham. They were in a covenant, a bond with Avraham Avinu. They were Avraham Avinu's best friends. It says in the Parsha Vayera that he consulted them to do the Milah, the Brit Milah. So Aner and Eshkol, the Midrash says, they said don't do it. One said it'll weaken your body and then your enemies will be able to attack you. Another one said it'll cause you an infection and you'll get weak and die from being weak. Mamre said, he was smart, Mamre, and these were students of Avraham Avinu, and they had the utmost respect for Avraham Avinu. So Mamre said the Midrash says this, the Midrash Tanchuma, Mamre said to Avraham, you're asking me? Hashem commands you to do the Brit Milah, and you're asking me for advice? What in the world? Whatever Hashem tells you, you should do, right? And that's why the Midrash says that whenever Hashem appeared to Avraham, it was always in the Elonei Mamre, the plains of Mamre. Because Mamre, of the three friends, he was the one who gave him the best advice. Rabbeinu Bachye, he says, I jotted this down, he says Mamre stands for what the Midrash says that Mamre said to Avraham. Mamre said, look, the God who saved you from the kings, the war of Nimrod, Amraphel, etc., the God who saved you from the famine that was in Israel, the God who saved you from the fire when Nimrod threw you in the fire when you were 3 years old, and you destroyed all your father Terach's idols, and you were thrown to Ur Kasdim, into the fire, and you came out alive. So the same God who saved you then, he'll save you from Brit Milah. Because the worry was, what did Aner and Eshkol say? You're so old. You do now the circumcision, it's going to make you so weak and in pain and vulnerable, etc. So Mamre said, if Hashem saved you from real big dangers, supernatural dangers, all the more so he can save you from a natural danger. So Rabbeinu Bachya says, the name Mamre, Mem Mem, Reish Aleph, spells out these 4 points that Mamre brought up to Avraham Avinu, why he should, yes, listen to Hashem's command, and yes, do the Brit Milah. Mamre, Mem is Melachim, the second Mem is Milah, the circumcision, Reish is Ra'av, the famine, and Aleph is Esh, the fire. In his name was hinted what he actually said to Avraham Avinu, what are you asking me? And also the commentaries on the Midrash say that's why it's called Mamre, because the word Mamre has a few connotations. One of these is someone who's mored, like he has chutzpah, he has boldness of holiness to stand up, because he was a student of Avraham Avinu, and he spoke to him in a way disrespectful by saying, "You're asking me? You're asking me?" By saying that, and not talking in a respectful manner, "Oh, Master Avraham Avinu, you know." And he didn't present himself that way. He said, "What are you asking me? If Hashem told you to do that, you're asking me," and making like as if Avraham Avinu looking bad. The commentaries say that he did that purposely, Avraham Avinu. He purposely asked them, what are you asking them? Hashem commanded you to do the circumcision. What are you asking to get advice? So the commentaries say he did this purposely in order that should be the Yetzer Hara. He was worried the Yetzer Hara would disguise itself in a different format to test him and to bring him down. He chose that this should be the Yetzer Hara, that he should illustrate as if a blemish of faith by asking on the command of Hashem, should I do this or not? What are you asking? Hashem told you to do it. He purposely did that, so that should be the channeling of the test from there, and that's it. On a deeper level, if we can just go off, Mamre and Aner and Eshkol correspond to sparks of people who are from the chamber of exchanges. Mamre, Rav Nosson explains this, is the exact same root word for tumurot, chamber exchanges. The chamber of exchanges is a deadly danger zone. It's a zone where the Yetzer Hara dominates by fooling people and exchanging good for evil, evil for good, light to darkness, darkness to light, purity to impurity, impurity to purity. It's a very scary domain. Avraham Avinu purposely entered people from that domain, which were Aner, Eshkol, and Mamre, even though they were righteous and they had righteous daughters, but they being descendants of Canaan, so they had unfortunately a stronghold footing in the domain of exchanges. That's why he was called Mamre. Aner and Eshkol was subservient in a way under the level of Mamre. He's last mentioned, and the rule is Acharon, Acharon, Chaviv. Whoever's mentioned last is really the best and the greatest. So he was like the leader of the 3. That's why, like we said earlier, Hashem always appeared to Avraham Avinu in the plains of Mamre, because he's the one who, unlike Aner and Eshkol, gave a good advice, but coming from a danger zone. That's why Avraham Avinu purposely lowered himself to ask them the question, people from the domain of the chamber of exchanges, where they are coming from that place, and there's still a danger, a big danger for them remaining holy and righteous. They need Avraham Avinu's merit and zchut to hold on. That's why he needed tzaddik in general, but in particular, these people. He purposely lowered himself to ask them about the Brit Milah, okay? Fine. This is just some background of Aner, Eshkol, and Mamre. This is the background we have about them. So now, in this week's parsha, Avraham Avinu now wants to seek a marriage partner. The midrash that we quoted from last week's parsha, that Avraham Avinu had thoughts. Maybe I should get my son Yitzchak married to someone who has righteousness and not yichus, not lineage. Forget about the lineage. So Hashem informed Avraham Avinu, no, wait, the true marriage partner of Yitzchak was just born now. He waited 3 years, and that's when he sent Eliezer. When Rivka was 3 years old, that's what Rashi says. Then Eliezer was sent in order to propose the marriage match between Rivka and Yitzchak. So Hashem said, no, I want you to keep the yichus and not the lineage. So that's why now, when Avraham commanded Eliezer, he made him swear. Let's take a look at the verse. The verses of the verse. This is chapter 24. So he called over, Avraham called his servant, Eliezer, the Zkan Beito, the elder of his household, who was in charge of everything that belonged to Avraham Avinu. And he said, I want you to put your hand under my thigh, like as an oath. That's how they did it back then. And I'm making you swear by God, Lord of the heavens and Lord of the earth, that you don't take a woman from the daughters of the Canaanites, in which I dwell amongst them. Rather, go get lineage, go get from my family. Ki el artzi vel moladeti telech. Rather, go to my homeland, my hometown, my homeland. Vel moladeti, where I was born. Go there. Velakachta isha livni liYitzchak, and from there, from my family's lineage, from my hometown where my family is originally from there you take a woman for my son Yitzchak. So then, Vayomer elav ha'eved, the slave, the servant, Eliezer said to Avraham, perhaps she won't want to follow. Ulai lo tovei isha lelechet acharai. So, should I take your son there? So Avraham says, next verse number 6. Vayomer elav Avraham said to the servant Eliezer, Hishamer lecha, beware, penta shivet bini shama, lest you take my son there. No, don't take my son there, okay? Let's skip a verse number 8. If now she refuses, so you don't take my son there to convince them, to find them when they actually see him, maybe it'll be better. So if now they refuse, so Avraham says clearly in verse number 8, now if the woman will refuse to follow you to marry my son Yitzchak, so then you are exempt from my oath that I made you take. Venikita mishvuati zot, you are now exempt from my oath, this oath that I made you take. Rak et bini lo teshev shama, rather my son, don't take him there. So Rashi says, so then how's Yitzchak going to get married? Who's he going to get married to? So Rashi says like this, Nikita mishvuati, etc. Vekach lo isha mibnot Aner, Eshkol Mamre, and instead take for him a wife from the daughters of Aner, Eshkol, and Mamre, who are tzadkaniyot. They're righteous. The problem is they don't have the proper lineage. They're descended from Canaan, who's cursed. So their second choice. First choice is to get a girl from my family. But don't you dare take Yitzchak out. Why? Rashi says elsewhere, because Yitzchak is considered pure, olah temimah. He's now someone who's solid and can't be exposed to the diaspora, outside of the Holy Land. That's why, coming up in the future Parshiot, when Yitzchak faced the famine, and he considered going down to Egypt, just like my father Avraham went to Egypt, I should go also. Hashem says, no, go ba'aretz hazot, stay here. Instead, he went to the land of Plishtim, which is technically part of the Holy Land, okay? Stay there, in the land of Gerar, the city of Gerar, the region of Gerar, which is under the Plishtim, but don't leave Eretz Yisrael to go to Egypt. Don't go there, okay? So Yitzchak has to be pure 100%. In that case, he does need the lineage as opposed to someone who has righteousness, even if they're descended from a bad lineage. Take in other words, a woman who has righteousness but doesn't have lineage. For Yitzchak, it's the opposite. Take someone who may not be so righteous but has good lineage. So normally, we say the opposite. The main thing is the person's good deeds. Plus, we're always taught that someone can come from so far, there's always hope. And if he works to become a tzaddik, he's accepted. It's like the rule of a mamzer talmid chacham. A mamzer, a bastard, but he's a Torah scholar, is even greater than a high priest. How could it be? Because he worked hard. Even though he comes from very bad lineage, he's a mamzer, but he's a talmid chacham, he has precedence over the Kohen Gadol. Yet for Yitzchak, who has to create a solid foundation for Yaakov and the future descendants, who did leave the Holy Land, who did go into the domain of technical evil, the forces of evil, the chamber of exchanges, which compared to the Holy Land, Rav Nosson says that's the idea of the diaspora. It's considered the idea of the chamber of exchanges. So Yitzchak, to make a solid foundation, it has to be totally solid, meaning to have good lineage. In the end, it worked out both ways, that Rivka ended up being a tzaddikis. She was righteous. Even at the age of 3, she already had good virtues and attributes. That was, again, back then, already at age 3 that she had a functioning mind and she's able to get married and to choose righteousness. Plus, she had the lineage. That was the miracle that was befitting for Yitzchak. And it was also due to Eliezer's prayers. Eliezer would daven to Hashem, please Hashem, send a good girl who's descended with good lineage, fit for Avraham's lineage, and fit for the right components to be married to Yitzchak Bezat Hashem. So this was Yitzchak. He could not marry Aner, Eshkol, Mamre because he had to be totally holy. And in the idea of marrying a second choice, Aner, Eshkol, Mamre, is like we said earlier, these are souls, even though they're holy and pure, but because they came from the chamber of exchanges, there's still a big danger of falling back and of the evil from that domain to try to overpower the good. And Yitzchak, who's called, like we said, an olah temimah, has to be married to a girl that matches his level of lineage, because again, he's tzaddik ben tzaddik. He's a tzaddik son of a tzaddik, like as opposed to Avraham, who was a tzaddik ben rasha, even though Terach did tshuva, but he's considered a rasha compared to Avraham Avinu's status. So Yitzchak didn't have that. He was already, in a way, strong. So he had to have a solid lineage in order that there should be a solid foundation for the future of the Jewish people. So this gives the opportunity that us, the descendants of Yitzchak, that even if, God forbid, we fall off and we're whatever, still we're a Jew. We're a Jew. The fact that we're Jewish, no matter how far we fall, I am a Yid. I have a spintali, I have a spark of Yiddishkeit within me that's in my DNA makeup, thanks to Yitzchak and Rivka. Thanks to this holy foundation that had to be solid. So then, whatever happens to us afterwards, even if we get stuck in the chamber of exchanges, but because we have a solid foundation, that's why we can always come back. That's why there's a connection. We now, by Yitzchak and Rivka making us solid and being in the Holy Land, being from good lineage, so then afterwards, no matter what happens, even though we enter a chamber of exchanges, we can always come back. That's the idea of Yitzchak Dafka marrying lineage as opposed to holiness. And an interesting point, why did Avraham Avinu then second choice be Aner, Eshkol, and Mamre? Because like we said, even though they're Canaanites, they worked to be holy. And if you want to say a little hint in the names of all three, because Rashi says, he told Eliezer, then take a daughter for my son from the daughters of Aner, Eshkol, and Mamre. He didn't say only from the daughters of Mamre, who sticks out from the previous parshiot. He said also Aner, Eshkol, and Mamre, because all three have a virtue. Aner can be seen as a composition of two words, Ain, Ner. Ain is 70, which can mean the 70 nations, and also the 70 facets of the Torah. Ner is a candle, being able to shine light from the 70 nations, shining the hidden Torah stuck in the 70 nations, revealing the 70 facets of the Torah. Eshkol, there's a term in the Gemara and the Talmud, Ish Eshkolot, a man has everything. He has talents in every area of the Torah. Ish Eshkol, the person, also as Torah scholar, is called Ish Eshkolot. He can also be a mohel, he can be a scribe, he can be a dayan, and he's educated in every area of the Torah, all the 24 books of the Chumash, of the Tanakh, and also other areas. Okay, it's called Eshkol is a cluster. It translates as a cluster of grapes. Eshkol, right? They grow in clusters, meaning he has many virtues. That was Eshkol, who came from the chamber of exchanges and was able to be a master, talented in many areas. Even though he has lineage from Canaan, but still he reached such a good level. And Mamre, like we said, the good advice is that he's known for, of the Malchut, Mila, Ra'av, Esh, Mamre, like we said earlier. So these three have their virtues, even though they came from such an evil place, an impure place, a cursed domain, which is the idea of being in the chamber of exchanges, hinted to in the name also of Mamre, who's the main top guy of the three. Fine. Avraham Avinu said, if now it doesn't work out, and Hashem doesn't help you, my servant Eliezer, to find the right girl, you don't take out Yitzchak, we'll marry him off to one of the daughters of Aner, Eshkol, Mamre, who do have merits, but don't have the lineage. Okay? So this is just the final point. And what comes out of all this is that even if we stray and we are trapped in the chamber of exchanges, whether it's to marriage or how we grew up, upbringing, or where we fall into, we have a solid foundation of Yitzchak and Rivka. That's why it was so important for Hashem to make it work. To make it work for Yitzchak to, yes, get married to Rivka, a descendant of Shem, so that we, having this solid foundation, now that we have it, no matter what happens, our DNA is solid. We're descendants of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. But thanks to Yitzchak, who was the middle, the Briach HaTichon, the middle bar, connecting Avraham and Yaakov to the holiness of Eretz Yisrael, right? And in that, B'ezrat Hashem, we have a chance to come back no matter where we fall. Okay? And also, if you take a look, just one final point, in Nishmat Kol Chai that we say Shabbat morning, right? There's a section called Befi Yesharim Titromam Uf Siftei Tzadikim Titbarach Uf Rishon Chasidim, right? Titkadash of Kerev Kedoshim Tithalal. You have there, it sticks out in most Sidurim, that you have the letters spelled out of Yitzchak and Rivka. And their name is specifically hinted to in Nishmat, which is us giving thanks to Hashem, as a reminder that Yitzchak and Rivka, being solid, a solid foundation for the future Jewish lineage and DNA, give us a reason why we can always give thanks to Hashem no matter what. Which is why, again, when a Jew wakes up in the morning, the very first thing he says is, Modeh Ani, I give thanks. That I woke up, I give thanks for everything else. All my good I'm giving thanks for is thanks that I have this amazing DNA, that I'm a Jew, I'm a descendant of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and I'm grateful for that. So that the Hodah, the giving thanks, which is the idea of Nishmat that we say Shabbat morning and Yom Tov, right, and Yom Tov morning, is indicated specifically connected to Yitzchak and Rivka to show that through their foundation, we can always give thanks to Hashem no matter how far we fall. And as bad things as things may be, even they look dark, we have a strong foundation to come back. B'ezrat Hashem. Shabbat Shalom. Have an amazing Shabbat, an amazing weekend.